here we go. Oh, I just had to fix up the screens. There we go. All right, everybody. We are here for episode 8 of the BRO2PRO podcast. I'm Big Moe, Morgan McDonald, here with my co-host, Randy Madsen. What's up, man?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Just another day in the coronavirus era.
On lockdown.
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good today, though, man. I had a massive cheat meal last night, and I just have to talk about it.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes when you just go absolutely overboard and like, it's good to just vent a little bit, right? Like kind of just talk it out, like, get some clarification and some confirmation from some other bodybuilders that it wasn't as bad as you actually thought it was.
All right, hit me.
Okay. So I completely went against what I said in the last podcast about not hitting up through drive-thrus, because last night it was like just like a fucky day. I trained legs, like by the time like 9 o'clock rolled around, I only had 3 meals in, and like they were 3 like bigger meals than I would normally have, because whenever I train legs, like I said before, I just kind of eat what I want on those days, but I obviously like still have good protein sources, and it's more so just like changing up the carb sources to have a little bit of extra fat. But even for me, like I ate like really clean, and there's only like 3 meals, so 9 o'clock rolls around. I'm like, all right, I can't get small, so I better go eat a lot of shitty food. So I go to, first I hit up this like gas station because my girlfriend wanted some chocolate and shit. So I pick up a couple of gas station chocolate chip cookies and this like red velvet cupcake thing, which actually ended up being such a good idea. It was one of the best things I ever had, I think, surprisingly. And so then I'm like, I never go to McDonald's. It's usually always a bad experience, but I decided to give it another shot. So I go to McDonald's, I get Big Mac meal, large fries.
Okay.
Double quarter pounder with cheese and bacon.
Okay.
10 nuggets. And apple pie. I crushed all of it. So I crushed all that McDonald's. I gave a few French fries to my dogs, but besides that, I flattened all of them. And then I had the 2, and they were like 2 like kind of like jumbo cookie things that came in this pack. Polished off 2 of those, ate the cupcake. The cupcake, I didn't think it was as much as it was. The thing probably weighed like a half a pound. Oh, yeah. And then I also, earlier this week, for my cheat day, I'll usually pick up a box of cereal. So before I train, I'll have a bowl of cereal, and after, and like with my cheat meal, I'll have a bowl of cereal. So I also had a bowl of cereal with all of that. And it was like the Tim Hortons birthday cake cereal, like the new stuff. Holy fucking shit, that's good, man.
Wow, really?
That cereal. Oh, you haven't heard of it? No. Yeah, Tim Hortons has like this like Timbit cereal out now. And I think the first one they came out with was like a chocolate Timbit one, and now they have the birthday cake Timbit one. Okay. And man, if you like cereal, highly recommend that. But so anyway, how do you feel? Oh fuck, dude, hard morning. I slept great, dude. Like I slept like phenomenally. Probably had like 10 hours sleep, like no joke. Because after I ate that, I just went straight to bed because I just hated myself, and sitting up on the couch is like not feeling so good. But I'd say I probably totaled an hour on the toilet so far today. But now I'm feeling good. Had a coffee, walked the dogs for half an hour. Just had my first meal right before we hopped on, which thank fuck today's a low carb day because it's a rest day. Kind of a shitty day to have a rest day after a meal like that, but it's a low carb day, and I'm just going to do a shit ton of cardio. And that was another reason why I went so big on the cheat meal, was because I was ending off like a 3-day like training run. So I did like back, then shoulders, and then legs. So yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm just going to soak all that shit up anyway. And my weight didn't even change, actually. My weight was the same this morning as it was yesterday for my update. So whatever. Anyways, I got that out of the way.
It's always seems to be like leg day. Bodybuilders always justify having a cheat meal or a free meal or a whole cheat day because it's leg day, right? That seems to be a theme in my experience.
Yeah, man. Like, and you know what? It makes me train harder. Like I don't eat much before I train. I don't eat much really before I train anything. Like I just have like my smallest meals before I train. So it's always just like 2 or 3 meals of like chicken and rice, maybe have like a little bit of steak or something like that. But when I get in the gym and I know I have this like big cheat meal that's going to happen like post workout at some point, like I train my fucking ass off. Like I'll do sets that I probably normally wouldn't have did, you know, because like in my that's just my mentality. Like I kind of have to earn something that I'm going to enjoy. So I did like an extra set of Bulgarian split squats. I did an extra set of leg press. I did an extra set of squats, which ended up being a triple drop set from 4 plates down to 2 plates. Like just shit like that, right? So yeah, I think if you're going to do a cheat meal like that, I think it's just important to have it on a big body part day. So like back or leg day, ideally. Some people say like have your cheat meal on like a weaker body part day, but even if like your weak point is arms, I don't think you should have a cheat meal on a fucking arm day because it's not going to make that much of a difference. Like, you know, just because you eat a couple cheeseburgers instead of your normal meal on arm day, it's not going to make a big difference. But like, I think on a day like legs or back, where the volume is higher, the intensity is higher, you're obviously burning way more calories. Your body will just use it better. Like that's just my philosophy on cheat meals.
Yeah, I think, well, that's the key word, I think, is the philosophy. Everyone has their own philosophy. That's yours. Personally, I've tried that. I used to do that way. I used to always want to eat more on leg day just because I knew that I'd be burning more calories. And then I thought, well, maybe I'll have it on a weak body part day, or maybe I'll have the cheat meal the night before a big day, like a chest day that I want to have a great pump and take some great pictures. Nowadays, I'm kind of more of the low and slow approach. I don't think that what you do on any one day has a significant effect. I just try to think more big picture. So whenever you have your cheat day, I mean, I don't think it's going to make you grow anymore or any less by eating low on a certain day, as long as over the course of the week, you're right around that average amount of intake that you're supposed to be at. Except I will say, if you're going to take some pictures for the gram, that's when you want that, like having a cheat meal before a chest and shoulder workout and then taking your pictures. That's as close to Photoshop as you could possibly get without actually doing it, right?
Oh yeah, I agree.
Water, that sodium, those carbs, you time that right, and it's like peaking for a photo shoot or peaking for a show. And I mean, it's philosophy when you come down to it.
So, like, when you're prescribing cheat meals to clients, like, how do you go about it? And like, where's your mind at when you're doing that? Like, is it just for like physique purposes, like physical purposes, or do you like kind of take it kind of like client to client and like, you know, mentally some of your clients need a cheat meal? So like, would you give a client a cheat meal maybe when they don't really need it physically, but you kind of know they need it mentally to keep them on track over the long term? Like, are these things that you take into consideration when you prescribe cheat meals to people?
Well, first I'll say that if I have any clients listening right now, current or in the recent last year or two, they're going to tell you, they're going to say, what, cheat meals? What?
Good.
Because I don't really give many cheat meals out, mainly because that's like, we're not here, or most of my clients are not in good enough shape. I'll be honest. They're not in good enough shape to have a cheat meal, right? If they were that, okay, I'll say that. And then I'll say, if someone is in awesome shape, we're ahead of schedule and they're showing signs of just being really run down and they need a boost, then I'll give them a cheat meal. That's for, people on a deadline, people in a contest prep. I have a lot of general dieting clients though, and I don't like to use cheat meals per se with them. It can be a trigger situation where it sends them overboard. But when I do give them out, it's never just to have a cheat day. It's never go eat whatever you want. It's almost always a rearranged macronutrient profile with most of the calories going to carbohydrates. And I don't usually just do a cheat day. I'll do a 2-day refeed period that's usually followed by a 5-day extra low. So let's say I have someone dieting on 2,500 calories a day and they're eating 200 grams of protein, 30 grams or 50 grams of fat, and then the rest of calories to carbs. What I'll do is from Monday to Friday, or I'll have them eat 100 or 200 calories less per day, bank those calories. And then on Saturday, you can add those banked calories back in. And on Saturday and Sunday, you can add those banked calories back in And if they only ate those, then their average for the week would still balance out to be the same average per day calorie intake. Just some of them are shifted or cycled, call it calorie cycling. But what then I'll take it a step further and I'll pull their protein down to as low as we can possibly go, like 0.8 grams of protein per pound of body weight. I'll pull fats as down as far as possible, but you can't eat much less than 30 grams of fat in a day. No matter you're going to be eating only fat-free candy and egg whites if you want to get lower than 30 grams of fat, and then all of the rest of the calories to carbs. So you might be eating 600 or 700 grams of carbs Saturday and Sunday, and still, so you fill out. That's a carb refeed. You haven't blown your load in terms of overeating calories because you banked some calories. That's what I might do for a competitor who can't afford to have a setback by eating excess calories, but I still want them to be able to eat a lot on a day or two. Maybe it's a mental thing. For me, I do that on myself when I do my own diet. That's how I have my refeed days. It's a mental thing. I don't overshoot my calories, so I should still technically be in the same caloric deficit for the week. And then occasionally, if someone is ahead, if I'm ahead, then I'll give them extra calories on that day as well. But as you can tell, it's still in a pretty controlled scenario. I'm never like, go and eat whatever you want on this day, and very rarely am I ever like, go and have this type of food. I do have some clients, and I have had some clients that everything's happening so good with them. Their body's responding so well. They're ahead of schedule that you kind of find yourself in a habit. It's like Saturday, and okay, go out for a burger and fries with your girlfriend or your significant other. But those are fewer and far between, to be honest.
No, yeah, totally. Yeah, I'm the same with my contest prep people. Like, it's very, very person to person. Like I was coaching one guy, man. This guy, he was getting ready for a show in New York on April 4th, and man, he was doing his first show. He had a good bit of muscle on, but he was like his guy, like in his like probably early 30s, mid 30s. And I guess because it was his first time dieting, man, like I really had to make him suffer. Like this guy was doing he was like 4 or 5 weeks out doing like 20, 30 grams of carbs a day from like vegetables. Cardio was at like 2 hours a day. Just like nothing was budging. So like he didn't see cheat meal for like 8 weeks, basically, maybe longer. I can't really remember, right? But then, like you said, then you have some guys. Like then I had one guy that was doing a show here in Newfoundland the same date, and like he started his diet pretty lean. Like his food was pretty high until like 8 weeks out. But then like as soon as I dropped his food and like just started bumping up his cardio a little bit, like his weight was just dipping and dipping. So like he dropped 3 or 4 pounds in a week. I'd give him like a big cheat meal with a dessert. He'd bump up 1 or 2 pounds, and then like the same trend would continue. And like I just wouldn't have to change his diet. So then you have some people like that can just tolerate the cheat meals. Their body uses them really well. Like I would get him to send me pictures like, if his update was Saturday, I get him have the cheat meal Saturday night. I get him to update me again Sunday just so I could see what would happen. And there would be times where like there would be no fullness change at all. His weight would be the same. Sometimes his weight would drop after the cheat meal. So then you just get those like hyper responders like that every now and then. But like you said, man, it's so rare to come by people like that,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and the average viewer or the average lifter, they'll see the cheat meals that you can eat and that other elite level bodybuilders can eat and regularly get to have during their contest prep and think, well, why don't I get to have a cheat meal if so-and-so gets to have a cheat meal? It's usually because you're a better responder or you started leaner. You don't have that as much weight to lose in the same amount of time. So you're dieting, but you're ahead of them and you can afford to have that, or you respond to having that. So
yeah, exactly, man. Like, and it's just like knowledge too. Like just knowing your body, right? Like I know, like when I do something like I did yesterday, like usually I eat 6 meals. Like yesterday I only totaled 4 meals. Right. Yeah. And they're all a little bigger. The last meal is a cheat meal. I'm also 300 pounds, like relatively lean. So like when you have that much muscle, like if I was ever going to put on like excess body fat, like I would really have to try and it would take me a while. Right. Like I'd have to not train, not do cardio, sit down, purposely fuck up my metabolism, like, you know, but where I've been doing, like, you know, the longer you're consistent with this, like it's going on like 8 or 9 years for me now of eating consistently, training consistently, like my body just, yeah, like I have that one cheat meal. Okay, like my weight might be up a little bit tomorrow. It usually takes 2 days for me. Usually the day after I have a cheat, I don't see much change on the scale. The second day after, I just feel like maybe it takes my body more time to absorb all the glycogen and things like that. Then the scale will go up, and then, you know, 2 or 3 days back in my diet, I'm back to where I was, or sometimes even lower, because you get that like metabolism boost from like the high calorie meal, right? Like, yeah. But anyway,
I had
go ahead.
actually I had a cheat meal last night as well. It's never my idea to have a cheat meal first. I'll say that. It's always my wife's. And last night she wanted to have some pizza. It was Friday, you know. Usually it's a weekend thing for us. Well, we will almost always have something. It used to be delivery or go up to a restaurant when pre-pandemic times, you know. But what it is, it's she'll bake something, or my sister will bake something and send that over. But last night we had pizza, not delivery. It was Delissio.
Nice.
Picked up some pizzas on our last grocery run because, see, when the pandemic first hit, I did our grocery run and I didn't buy anything special. It was like clean foods, 20 pounds of rice, 20 pounds of oats, 20 pounds of lean beef, chickens, and so on, frozen vegetables, etc. Well, 3 or 4 weeks of that went by, and she ran out of the chocolate chips and stuff that she had stocked up before the pandemic. She ran out of those real quick, and so she's someone that needs something sweet after supper, or most meals, to be honest. So I can say that. And so the next time comes around and she wants to go to the grocery trip, mainly because she wanted a lot of different baking goods. Everyone's baking during this time, right? But she wanted some specific stuff that I didn't know where it would be easily. And with the way the grocery stores are set up now, like, you need to know what you need and you need to know where it is.
Yeah, it's a big fuck around now.
Something. If you don't get it on that first trip, then you're walking down these arrows, you're in a choreographed line and all this stuff. So anyways, she went and did it, and she brought back a couple pizzas and all of her baking stuff. And we had that last night with some lean beef on the side to get that protein in. We also had some homemade Reese's peanut butter cups and that she made, and then some homemade cookies that my brother-in-law made.
Shit, you went pretty hard too.
Well, you know, we split one pizza and then had a couple desserts too. And that replaced a meal. What would normally have been a pile of rice and beef and vegetables, it became pizza and beef and cookies. And I ate a little lighter. That was my second to last meal. I ate a little lighter the next meal, of course, because you're so full from when you ate that meal. I woke up the same way today as it was yesterday. 0.2 pounds less, actually. So I respond I mean, I can eat a lot, and I respond well to it. So
I think the key thing, man, honestly, like, unless you're someone like in the off season who's a hard gainer and you might bump it up to 2 cheat meals a week, I think it's just having that like one meal a week, like, and you're safe. You know what I mean? Like, as long as you're training consistently and like the next day, like, you're right back on your diet. I think where people get in trouble is the people who like kind of snack in between meals every day. And like, they're like, oh, it's only an extra like 200 or 300 calories. But when you do it every day, and ends up being an extra 2,000 calories a week, which could be like an extra full day of eating for some people. Like, when you really do the math like that way, I think that's where people really, you know, fuck shit up in the long term, right?
Yeah, and it's a treat, and you earn it by being good for a number of days, a number of weeks, and you create a situation that, you know, merits some extra calories that won't set you back. And that's my approach.
Yeah, and I just know for myself and like my clients too, like more so my lifestyle clients, I guess. But, you know, when you just have that one cheat meal a week, like, first of all, it gives you something to look forward to. So it helps people stay accountable to their diet, like myself included. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to fuck up my diet on Thursday if I know I'm having a cheat meal on Saturday. Like I want to feel like I earned it and I actually deserve it, right? Whereas if I cheat on my diet before my scheduled cheat meal, I'm not really going to feel like having it, because I just know, you know, that I didn't really earn it. And also the fact that like today, And for the next 3 or 4 days, like I'm super motivated to like stick to my diet 100%.
Yep.
Right? Like it's kind of remotivates you. Like you got all that shit out of your system. And now like, you know how shitty you feel after you eat 5,000 calories of McDonald's like I did.
Yeah.
And then you're just like, all right, I want to eat clean. I want to feel good again. I want my waist to feel small again. Like, you know, so that's the other benefit of it too. But so let's move on to the second part of this podcast. We're going to talk about, because you're going into your off season now as a classic physique competitor, trying to improve once again. So we're going to talk about off-season cycles for classic physique competitors, and I know you're getting ready to start one. Have you started yet?
Yes, last week.
Okay, yeah, you did start. So let's run through what you're doing, and then I want to give my opinion on what I would do as a coach if I was coaching someone that was in that classic physique off-season situation.
For sure. Okay, so the first thing that I'll say is that this is for entertainment purposes only. You and I, neither of us are medical professionals, doctors, not anyone that the average person should take any weight in this. So with that being said, this will actually be my third off-season cycle. And that's important to note because as bodybuilders, we think long-term. We're thinking a whole year at a time, right? So each cycle is a piece of the puzzle, and you have to consider what you did in the cycle before that, what your weight is at, what your blood pressure is like, what your, in my preference, what your average resting heart rate is like, what your body fat is like, what your training goals or your body weight goals are for that, and the cycle that's going to come after that, and when the next competition is. So for me, my last competition was North Americans at the end of August in 2019. And my next competition is probably going to be Atlantics in 2021, I think anyways. That's the way the schedule is looking for me so far, just lifestyle-wise. I had thought about competing at the end of 2020, but shit's so messed up. Plus, we're supposed to get married in the fall. I don't want to be dieting around that. So now, with all that being said, what my current cycle is going to be, starting at 203 pounds at not too fat, 50 millimeters or so across 9 points. That's about 20 millimeters away from stage weight, which is for me 10 to 16 weeks out condition. I'm going to do this and try to minimize fat gain, obviously, but you have to be more conservative with the fat gain than if you just finished a show. Because if you just finished a show, you don't have much body fat at all. Adding some body fat is totally fine. So with that being said, going into this cycle, my average blood pressure is 124/78, and my average resting heart rate upon awakening is 72, which is all good. That means if I wanted to, I could push it. There's no red flags going into this cycle. However, I still take a very modest approach. And so with all that build up, what my cycle is going to be, and sorry for the build up. And
no, it's important though. And that's the shit people need to hear. It's not just like, oh, I'm going to do this, this, and this. It's like taking into consideration all those variables that you just listed before we plan these things, because at our level, they're so purposeful. Anyways, continue.
Yeah. Well, the reason I really say sorry for the buildup is because this is not anything that's particularly exciting. It's actually one of the more boring and lower dose cycles that I've ever done, and that's mainly because I just did a bigger cycle. I've got another cycle to come after this, which will be bigger. So this is kind of a bridging 16-week cycle. So it's actually quite a low dose and quite a modest selection of compounds, but they're my base compounds. So it's going to be 375 milligrams of testosterone and anthate per week. I did 500 last time. I felt great. I'm going to see how I want to see how my, general health and sex drive goes on a little bit less. And then in addition to the testosterone and anthate, I'm also going to use primobolan and masteron and anthate. I'm going to start those at 200 milligrams per week each, so just 775 milligrams total per week to start. But then every 3 weeks, I'm going to add a little Primo and or a little Masteron, working up to a peak dose of 400 of each and 375 milligrams of testosterone, with the thought in the back of my head that after 4 weeks of this amount of testosterone, possibly bumping it up to 500, just depending on how I feel.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
How my nipples feel, for example. That's a big one for me. As someone that has had gyno before, got the gyno surgery done, that's something that's always in the back of my head, mainly because that's just how I respond to, that's just how my body chooses, I guess, to aromatize. Some people, they hold a lot of water. Some people, their face turns into a moon face and they don't get any nipple signs. I'm the opposite. I don't hold water in a negative way, but my nipples just want to fucking explode when I aromatize too much. So that's another reason why I rely quite a bit on Masteron and Anthate. It has a kind of a buffering effect on estrogen.
Yeah.
So we want our estrogen to be normal and high normal in some cases, all depending on your response. I like to keep mine at bay, but I don't want to crush it by using an Aromacin or a Arimidex or a Novadex or a Femera or whatever. I try to build my cycles in a way that you should not need any AI beyond what the Masteron does. So that's the testosterone and AAS, which is really basic, but where it starts to get fun and starts to get interesting for me is when you go with the non-AAS pharmaceuticals. I also like to use insulin, metformin. I'll be using clenbuterol and growth hormone on this cycle. So
why the clen?
So that's a good question. I don't want to take too long to explain all this, but I'm going to be using growth hormone and insulin, and those do make me hold water. And because they make me hold water so much, and I've got these tiny little wrists, my hands fall asleep and wake me up all night.
Yeah, I fucking know what that's like.
Yeah, and that sucks. And I've dealt with it, and I've stayed on the insulin, I stayed on the growth hormone the whole cycle, and I just dealt with the poor sleep. I don't want to do that as much this time, so I'm going to take my insulin 2 weeks on, 1 week off. And on that 1 week off, because the insulin is out, I'm slightly less anabolic. And, part of the way we want to design our cycles is to be as anabolic as possible around the clock. So to make up for that gap in anabolism when the insulin's out, I'm going to use some clenbuterol. The clen is a mild anabolic, very low mild, but it also has some fat burning capabilities. And so because I'm teetering on that level of having too much body fat, I'm going to do the 2 weeks on insulin and growth hormone, 1 week off of the insulin, still on the growth hormone, but to replace the anabolism, I'm going to use about 50 micrograms of clen per day just for that 1 week, and then repeat. So 2 weeks on both growth hormone and insulin, and then 1 week off of the insulin, but replace it with clen. And then when I hop back on, I'll hop back on the insulin, but I'll use a little bit more. So in the first 2 weeks, I'll take 10 units of our insulin with breakfast. I'll have like 100 grams of carbs at that meal, like 15 or 20 grams of fat to cover our insulin, which we discussed in the last call. It's longer. So you want to have slower digesting carbs and some fat in there to just prolong the digestion of carbs. So there's just glucose there for the insulin when it peaks the second time.
So what does that first meal look like?
I have 4 eggs, a cup of oats, a tablespoon of jam in the oats, and then like a cup of carrots, a cup of tomato, sweet tomatoes, and a cup or 2 of spinach and a banana.
Cool.
So that's like 100 grams of carbs and 15 to 20 grams of fat. But then when I hop back on the insulin, and also this is in combination with adding in more Primo and more Masteron, then I'm also going to use a bit more insulin. So I'll add insulin at the second meal. So only 5 units, because...
So you're doing 10 units of Slim with the first meal and 5 with the second?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the whole time I'll be taking 500 milligrams of metformin, which is an insulin mimetic. It'll help preserve my insulin sensitivity. It helps you get more of the insulin effect without using as much insulin. Metformin tends to reduce a diabetic's reliance on insulin by about 20%.
Yeah, it's the first drug they always get prescribed before they're prescribed insulin.
Yeah. And so I like it with or without insulin. I find that I can eat more carbs or it makes me fuller. So a few keynotes in this is I start with the lowest effective doses, minimal masteron. It's also the lowest amount of insulin that I use. And as the cycle goes on, I add a little more. So it's a little more primo and a little more mass. And then it's also a little more insulin. And it's kind of like when you're dieting, but in reverse order. When you're dieting, you have to keep taking calories away and keep adding cardio to further your calorie deficit. You're leaning into that calorie deficit. Well, similarly, with my anabolic and androgenic steroid cycles and the peptides, as in growth hormone and insulin, start low because 775 milligrams, when you go to that from only 225 milligrams, which is my cruise dose, that's like 3 times as much. 775 milligrams doesn't sound like much, but it's 300% what I was doing. So I'm going to get a response from that. But as my weight goes up and my body kind of levels out on that dose, you want to lean into a little bit more, add some more milligrams, add some more insulin, for example, and proceed in that fashion. I will say, though, in addition to that, I do have some non-steroid supplements. I take a daily baby aspirin. I take Zeta-May, I take chromium picolinate, and I take slow niacin. The slow niacin's for cholesterol. It's an over-the-counter supplement that has shown positive effects on HDL and LDL, but it's pretty expensive.
Yeah.
And that's the cycle kind of in an overview.
So will you look at increasing things every 2 weeks?
Every 3 or 4 weeks.
Okay, depending on how you feel.
Well, no, and it's not even depending on how I feel. That is going to be the anabolic cycle, regardless.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
So and that will be you might bump things up like 3 or 4 times over the course of the 16 weeks.
Yeah. Let me see. Yeah. Every 4 weeks, I add 200 milligrams of something. 100 milligrams of primo, 100 milligrams of masteron.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you said you might bring test up to 500.
Yeah. So.
And will that be the max?
Yeah, 500 is the most testosterone that I would use because it's just been my experience that when I use more than that, it just goes straight to the nipples.
Okay, yeah, right. So that's your biggest concern there. How much? Like, what's your weight cap for classic physique, and what were you last time you competed?
My weight cap is 181 pounds, and the last time I competed in Pittsburgh, I weighed in at about 171, 172.
Yeah, 10 pounds.
I can put on 10 pounds, which is promising, but it's at the same time, I just have a really hard time putting on weight, just doesn't come easy for me. It's either that or I have a hard time retaining it during prep because I push myself so hard to get that extreme condition that.
Which you have to, though. You have to.
So,
like, if you're not in crazy shape for classic, like, you're fucked.
You'd think so, but the guys that won my class.
Okay. Let's talk about, keep it Canadian.
Yeah. Okay. That actually, that's a very good point.
I know.
I've had this conversation with the head judges in Canada, and they admit that in the States, at least in 2019, they judged based on shape and size in classic physique, and they overlooked condition for that, that overall shape. So you didn't have to be the leanest guy, or you didn't even have to be particularly lean. If you had the right shape they were looking for, they'd place you ahead. But Rudy in Canada, he wants that condition.
Yeah.
He's the judge. He's going to be the head judge of the Toronto Pro qualifier and the Canadian Nationals in October, the Vancouver Pro. He's that guy, and he wants that condition. So I'm glad you pointed that out.
Yeah. So what, do you have any idea of like your next pro qualifier?
Yeah, I'll probably, I'll be honest with myself. I'm probably going to have to do at least 2 pro qualifiers. That's what I'm planning. I don't have such a big head that I'm going to go in and win my first pro qualifier. So if I go to Atlantics, which will be in April, then the next pro qualifier in Canada after that will be the Toronto pro qualifier. Depending on how all this coronavirus shit is looking, I might do an international show, but a lot of things remain up in the air in that regard.
All I'm saying is, would you adjust your look depending on what show you did, knowing what you know now? So say if you do the Toronto Pro, you're obviously going to try to come in diced, right?
That's a good question. I've actually decided that regardless of what my next show is, I'm going to diet as hard as I possibly can, but then I'm going to fill up to the max, assuming I'm still a few pounds under my weight cap, which is actually that's a real determining factor as well. How close I am to the cap.
You could easily be capping out at like 180, 181 by then.
Yeah, I'm just going to try to push my fullness as much as possible, no matter what my next pro qualifier is, even if it's in Canada. And the reason I say that is because I have learned also from experience, this is different for everyone, that I have to really push it. I was conservative in 2019 at North Americans. I have a coach, and it was the first competition that I have done since 2012 or 2013 with a coach. And this coach wanted to be conservative with my carb up because in both of our minds, we thought, okay, North Americans has historically been a competition where they rewarded condition. So we want to maintain condition and not go overboard with the fullness and sacrifice condition. Well, we did that, and I was the leanest guy on stage, leanest guy in the first call out, but I was in the 6th spot in that first call out, basically last place in the first call out. Leaner than everyone else, but not as full, and hence a lower placing. After that show, I ate that day, I ate the next day, and I ate the next day, and I did not lose any condition. I was still taking pictures with full glutes, full condition. And so lesson learned is I can really push it, and I will have to really push it, and I can fill out more than I think without sacrificing condition. So
always can, man. Always fucking can. Yeah, same thing fucking happened to me. It's just that mindset that you have. Like you think that I think it's just from being in prep for so long and being so lean for so long, like you get this mindset that like 1 or 2 days of overeating and like you're going to spill over or something like that. But like when you're really truly peeled and depleted, man, you're looking at like up to a week of being in a caloric surplus before you start showing excess water or excess body fat, especially like you can't put on body fat overnight. Like that's a full process your body has to go through of storing excess fat, right? Like excess calories, turning that into fat and storing it somewhere on your body takes longer. And even more so when your metabolism is absolutely cranked, your muscles are soaking up every carbohydrate you put into it because you've been starving for so long. So yeah, it always takes a lot longer than you think. So
that is what I'll say about that though is it's at that point in bodybuilding that bodybuilding is more of an art than it is a science, because you can know the science of how many carbs if you got X number of lean pounds in your frame, then technically you should only be able to consume this many carbs before you fill your glycogen stores and spill over. You can't apply that logic in filling out for a bodybuilding show. It just never works out that way. It's an art, not a science at that point.
Exactly. And how does an artist get better at their craft? You fuck up over and over and over again until you're finally like you figured out all the shit you did wrong and you eliminate those things, and then eventually you get your masterpiece, right?
Right, I agree. So that's my cycle. That is what, and full disclosure, that's not the cycle I necessarily would have written up for myself. This is from my coach, who I defer to as an expert on off-season cycles. Would I do anything different? Yeah, but that doesn't mean it's a good thing. I would have jumped out of the gate with a higher dose. I'd be like, there's no way I'm going to run less this cycle than I did my last cycle. But his logic is, in short, his logic is think of getting in an elevator. You want to go up to the top floor, you just press one button, and that will get you to that next floor. You don't press 5 buttons. You only need to press 1 button. So you only need to start off on a little bit. With 300% what I was doing, that's enough. I don't have to go straight to 2 grams, for example. And likewise, the next cycle that I do will be more. That will be the cycle that precedes my prep cycle. So that'll be a bigger one.
Yeah.
And then I have a bigger one coming. And knowing that I'm already the biggest start a cycle that I've ever been, we don't want to use too much. We want to leave that option for the next cycle, so to speak.
So
all that said,
I'll go ahead.
Having gone over that, what would you do for a bodybuilder in my situation who is 10 to 20 pounds under his weight cap in an off season?
Okay, so we'll do that first because I've written up 2 cycles that I would give to a classic physique guy. Okay, so let's go over that one first. So if I had a guy that needed to gain, that had, say he had a year and a half, 2 years to work with of like off season, and really needed the size, I would do, and now, okay, well, yeah. So I would do 125 milligrams of test E or test SIP. I'm not really picky. 125 milligrams every day. I would do Mast E 125 milligrams 3 times a week. I would do 125 milligrams of EQ 3 times a week. And I would do 150 milligrams of DECA twice a week. The Arimidex, because of the high, like it's not like the doses themselves are high individually, like the test is a little high, but it's several compounds, right? So I would do 0.5 milligram of Arimidex every second day, which to me, personally for anti-estrogens, that's kind of like a high dose. Just because like I don't really need to use any at all.
Nice.
When I do, like right now, I take a quarter tab of Aromasin twice a week, and like the day after I take it, like I feel like fatigued every time. Like you know, I just know myself, I'm sensitive, so I'm really careful. Like it's I just say that like 0.5 milligram of Arimidex every other day because it's like a very generic thing, but it's obviously really person to person. Like you know, I've been on a similar cycle to that I just listed and had no side effects, you know, from estrogen besides. And that's what I was going to say earlier. I'm like the opposite of you. Like my estrogen sides are like a bloated face. Like I hold a bit of water. Not so much that I get cankles or anything like that, but just enough so that like my hands will go numb a lot and like shit like that, right? Just like I feel constricted depending on like where my body is. And with that, I would do 4 units of GH every day. So my reasoning behind all of that.
On that, sorry to interrupt you. For listeners, my growth hormone dose, which I didn't mention, is 2 IUs before bed, Monday to Friday, and I take the weekend off. That's also for water retention purposes. Take a couple of days off, let the water come out, and then get back.
And are you using pharma grade or generic?
Yeah, I only use pharma grade. I use the generic stuff and off-label stuff for a couple of years. And once I switched to pharmaceutical grade, I was just like, no going back. Keep in mind, that's in my budget. I have a good day job. Yeah. And I don't have much other expenses. So I invest in this. Don't expect anyone else to use farm grade all year.
Yeah. That's what you're spending your money on.
Yeah.
Same with me. Okay. So the reason basically behind that cycle, so you have a guy that has a lot of room to grow, obviously. And need size. Like if you're 20 pounds under your weight limit in classic and you're trying to compete at like a national level, like you obviously need to get bigger. And again, so this cycle is for someone who has like 2 years. And the reason being, so like the first year, I'm really going to try to blow them up with a cycle like this. What I know from experience and working with people is that when a muscle first grows, right? Like over the last few years for me, when I was like really putting on the size, the muscles get bigger, but they look smooth. Like they have like a young look, right? Mm-hmm. So that's why with a guy that needed that much weight on, my first year would just be really just trying to get him big. Like I want him like 40 pounds over, 50 pounds over what his cap weight would be, right? So this guy's going to be looking at putting on like 60, 70 pounds over like a year and a half, 2 years. And then I want to keep him there, right? Like if a guy's cap is 200 pounds on stage, like I want him at 250 for like a year, you know, floating in between 250, 260, because I want him to get that muscle, and then I want him to keep it. And we're going to try to refine that look at that weight. So we're going to try to keep him around that weight. If he drops a few pounds under 250, that's fine. But I just want to recomp at that weight so that come pre-contest time when we're 20 weeks out, he's been 250 for a year. His food is high. Everything is high. The drugs would not get any higher than what I just listed, because to me, that's like, especially for someone that's only 250 pounds, like I say only, but that's plenty, right? If you go any higher, in my opinion, if you go any higher than that with the drugs, then you're just kind of, I worry about receptor tolerance and things like that then when you're moving into pre-contest mode, right? Like you want them reacting well to compounds so the body fat comes off correctly. Like you don't want to be in like a non-responsive state as you're getting ready for a show, obviously, right?
Agreed.
So that's what I would do, like the higher doses. I like test higher than everything else, you know, at least just a little bit. Like I wouldn't want to see like, you know, a masteron or EQ dose higher than a test dose on a cycle. Like in my mind, test rules all. Like the test should be the highest, like per milligram per week, right?
Yeah.
I love MAST-E because of the same thing, like with the anti-estrogen type stuff that it helps with, right? And it helps with the estrogen sides, which will kind of help keep like a harder look as we go, so things don't get like too out of hand, water retention wise or body fat wise. Obviously, that's diet dependent too, but you know, if someone's taking it that serious, their diet's going to be pretty on point.
Yeah.
Even if they're trying to gain a lot, there's still a way to go about it. And if you have things like pharma grade GH in there, it's pretty hard to gain like a ton of excess body fat anyway.
Sure.
EQ, I love just because, especially if you're on high food, like if you're on a high carbohydrate diet, equipoise just gives your body the ability to store way more glycogen than you could without it. And I find side effects are really minimal on equipoise, especially at those doses. Like I know guys who won't run under 1,500 milligrams of EQ a week because they just have the philosophy that high dose EQ is better. I'm not really there with it. Like this is just like 375 milligrams a week, right? And that's because you have Masteron and Deca with it, you know? Now, if you were just running test and EQ, you could probably go up to like 600 to maybe even 1,000 with the EQ. But I also like having Deca in there. Not a huge fan of Deca because the prolactin sides. Obviously, if you're a guy, it's really annoying. If you have high prolactin, your dick's not going to work, and that's really frustrating. I know for me personally, 300 milligrams a week is my limit. Like if I run any higher than that, I get really bad prolactin sides, and then if they're bad enough, you got to take like Caber to get them down, and that just like throws your hormones for a full fucking whirl, and it's going to hinder your progress regardless if you have to bring something like that in. So you want to avoid that problem right away. If you're sensitive to Deca, just don't use it at all. Like I know some pros that won't go fucking near it because the side effects are just too brutal. But if you can get away with it, like I run 300 milligrams a week on all my off-season cycles. Your joints feel amazing. It definitely helps if you're trying to put on size. It's a good drug to have in there. But yeah, the biggest thing I think is the joint support you get from it. And if you aren't having joint pain, then you can train harder and heavier, which if the food is high and the drugs are high, like you're going to grow. Like, and that's the goal, right? So that's kind of the philosophy behind having the Deca in there. The Arimidex, like I said, person to person. And if you're running 4 IUs at pharma grade GH every day, you're going to be doing pretty good on the result side of things, you know, given that all other variables are where they need to be. So that would be the cycle for someone that really needed to put on a lot of size. So like really, I'm just treating them like a bodybuilder at that point, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And again, like I said, just to say it again, basically that's like if I have, 1.5 or 2 years to work with somebody before they step on stage again, that I would put in place something like that, because you need a long time to get the weight up properly and not gain too much excess. And then you also need 20 weeks after being that heavy for that long to come down properly and bring like a good conditioned look on stage and not lose a lot of muscle throughout the process. Because like I said, you're going to have to lose 50 pounds over 20 weeks, right?
Yep.
You know, so you're looking at what? Almost 2 pounds a week on average, a little bit more. Yeah. Totally. So yeah, so it's going to be a good long diet, right? So I have another cycle, which is very similar to what you're doing right now. And that's for somebody, because there is a lot of these classic physique guys, like especially guys that were bodybuilders that came down to do classic physique that are already at their weight limit. But of course, like you still can improve. And like, that's why I was talking about the muscle fibers. Like when someone first adds a lot of muscle, like their muscle, it's younger muscle, it's newer muscle. Like you just basically grew all these muscle fibers. They're stretched out, so they don't have a very dense look. They kind of just have more of a smooth look. Still big and round and a lot of volume, but like density means a lot, especially when you're trying to be at a competitive level. You know, we're looking for that grainy look, especially with classic physique. Like in my mind, conditioning rules classic physique, right? The better condition you are, the more shapely you look. So it just brings out to me all like, you know, the things that classic should be, right? Which is like quality over like size per se.
Yep.
So this cycle, I would just do 125 milligrams of test 3 times a week. So like Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So again, like you're looking at 375 milligrams like you're doing.
Which is what I'm doing. Yeah.
Yeah. I would do, I would start with 150 milligrams of Primo a week. So 50 milligrams 3 times a week. I love Primo. I think it's awesome. I just think with that dose, you might have to look at bumping it up to maybe even like 4 or 5 times a week, just because I know from my own experience, the more frequent you are with Primo, the more you'll get out of it. Like you should see like pretty substantial increases in strength and muscular endurance throughout your workouts. So you should, if you're using real Primo, you should be strong throughout your whole workout, you know? And if you're not, then either your Primo is not real or you need to increase your frequency of dosing it. And Masteron, 125 milligrams twice a week. So only 250 milligrams a week. GH, I would only run it 4 IUs 5 times a week. And the Arimidex, I would do half a milligram every 3 days. So you're only taking a milligram a week, really, on most weeks. So, and the idea behind that cycle is again, like you're not looking to get bigger because you can't, but you're still trying to improve quality. And I think with the Primo Masteron especially, those are drugs that kind of promote hardness in the body, and obviously still have, you know, anabolic effects. You're going to control how much you grow with how much food you eat, really. So you're really only going to want to get 20, 25 pounds above stage weight at most, so that you don't have to absolutely crucify yourself on a diet. So I think this cycle would allow that. It would allow you to keep good conditioning while getting 20 pounds over, and it would still give you what you need to improve, especially weak points and things like that, right? Like someone in your case, for example, like you have huge fucking legs that cannot get any bigger. So like you could eliminate leg training, focus all your efforts on upper body. And I think with that protocol, you'd have good results and you wouldn't have to worry about getting too big, right?
Yeah.
So,
so
that's what I would do.
I'd offer my thoughts on both cycles. On the first cycle, I think all that testosterone plus EQ and DECA, there's going to be a lot of aromatizing going on, but you've got Arimidex in there. That Arimidex, it was Arimidex, right? Right. I think that will balance out depending on the person. So I don't think they should have too high of estrogen. I think on that cycle, regular blood work would be important because you'd want your client to come back to you so that you can look at, among other things, of course, their estrogen level to make sure it's not too high or too low, because some people respond so much to the Masteron plus Arimidex combo that you're not taking much, but it could actually put your estrogen below where you want it to be. So I'd say that. I think with the EQ plus the high test dose, I think your hematocrit and your blood viscosity could really start to creep up. So I would have that individual do a fair amount of cardio. to bring that down, and also drink a lot of water.
I was just going to say that. Yeah, I was just going to say you got to drink a shit ton of water on that cycle. Like you really got to stay hydrated.
The metric I like to use to keep their blood viscosity down, in addition to using aspirin daily, would be to have 2 liters per 1,000 calories that you eat. So if you're eating 5,000 calories, I'm serious when I say you got to drink 8 to 10 liters of water a day to flush out or to keep your blood hydrated, because you don't want to be at risk of throwing a clot on that.
Dude, I can speak for that directly. I got my blood work done at the end of a cycle pretty similar to that. And it was the only time my blood work came back like kind of iffy. And the only thing was my RBCs and my hematocrit was a couple points higher than high normal.
Yeah.
And I actually blame it on hydration. And we discussed that actually on a podcast before. That was the time where I had like trained legs, had a big stupid cheat meal, didn't drink a lot of water the day before. And like it wasn't scary, but it was high. It was higher than it should have been, right? So
yeah, it was high enough that your doctor would be like, "Hey, this number is high."
Yeah, he wanted to mention it, and he just reminded me. He was like, "Now this could probably just be taken care of, if the environment you had your blood work done was different, and the fact that you need to drink more water, because it's really, when you're at that point when I was eating so much, it's easy to disregard that, right? Like that's something you actually do have to keep yourself.
It's real work.
Oh fuck yeah, man! Totally, dude. Hydration.
Drink all that water.
Yeah, like hydration is, I think, one of the most underlooked things. It's something I pay like a ton of attention to now, especially like electrolyte wise, like pre-training. Like fuck, dude, I'm obsessed with sodium.
Yeah, well, that's part of the business of bodybuilding. It's the hard stuff that doesn't get talked about, that gets overlooked. It's a commitment to drink all the water or hydration that you need to do. Just as it is a commitment to train real hard, to stick to your diet. The overlooked thing is how much water you got to drink. It's surprising looking at your blood work. And so the other cycle, obviously I think that's a great cycle because it's basically what I'm going to do right now.
Yeah.
Except you've got Arimidex in there, and I personally think that on that much testosterone with that Masteron, I don't think that you need the Arimidex at all. I think
you know what? I would again, like person to person, right? So I would talk to that person about like what they did before. If they ever used any before, like I wouldn't with any time with estrogen type stuff, like it's person to person. Like I kind of just put that there just because most people would assume that it would be there, I guess, you know what I mean? Not many people even consider cycles without some type of anti-estrogen.
Right. I try to build mine to not have a reliance on them at all. And so that's why my cycle looks the way it does. Aromatization as possible, only so much that you have your basic sex drive or sexual male sex characteristics fulfilled. And I think if anyone's listening to this and kind of comparing what you do versus what I do, I think that some of the main differences are you like to use a lot of testosterone. I don't like to use a lot of testosterone. I only use just enough testosterone to fill the basic male sex characteristics. And then I use everything else to do the job.
Yeah.
So I will almost always end up using more Primo or more Masteron than I do testosterone. And so another thing that I wanted to ask you about, because I don't do it, is you like to do higher frequency injections. Whereas I do, and I didn't mention this, I do all of those in anthate esters on Sunday, and then I don't inject all week. I just 1 day of injections. I do all my shit on that day, and I don't do it again until the next week. And so to explain the reason that I do it that way is because that's how I feel that the drugs were designed. They designed the drugs with a specific half-life so that an individual would only have to administer them on that frequency and not have to worry about it. It's less complicated. I like it because it's less injections, fewer infection risks, fewer holes poked in your body that create an immunoresponse to fight off that, because when you inject yourself, your body has to utilize some of its recovery factors to go and fix that hole. It's not a lot, but it's a factor, and we're majoring in the minors here. So that's my perspective. But everyone else in bodybuilding, everyone likes higher frequency injections. Can you speak to what you like about the higher frequency injections?
Yeah. So I've had issues with scar tissue before. It was only when I was shooting like 2 or 3 cc's at a time that I would deal with that, and I would get scar tissue buildup, and I would know because as I was continuing on with these injections twice a week with like the 2 or 3 cc's at a time, um, and like I was like I'm still moving around injection sites, like I'm doing rear delt, lat, glute, glute, right? So it's still a pretty good rotation, but like my injections were getting more and more sore. I was getting more post-injection pain doing it that way. And I just assumed that it was just because it was so much oil going in one spot at once and your body has to break it down over the course of like a week or two. Um, and yeah, and it was mostly that. It was mostly just a scar tissue thing. It's probably been, I would say 3 or 4 months now. I've been doing the more high frequency pinning, like up to, it was every second day for a while, and that was pretty good, but I was still getting some sore like spots. Now that I've been injecting every day for the last 8 weeks that I've been on this cycle, and I've had like no issues at all with any injections. Like, and I've even used a couple different brands as well of gear, and I've had like no issues. Like every injection is smooth as butter. I feel like too, I mean, this is like a pretty basic argument to make. Not sure if it would make much of a difference, but just like more stable blood levels, I guess. Even though even though, and I guess too, because I'm using, I took out the Primo, but I was using Primo at the time. And in my mind and my coach's mind, the best way to make the most, and keep in mind too, like we were in pre-contest mode originally, right? So we started the everyday injections based off the fact that around 8 weeks out, we were going to switch to some shorter esters.
That would necessitate it. Anyways.
So we were going to have to inject every day anyway.
Yeah.
So we were just like, because he even asked me in the beginning, he was like, do you want to do every second day or every day? I was like, well, let's just do it every day if it's going to be every day eventually anyway. Right. So we just did like the low dose of test every day, 80 milligrams of Primo every day, and then I would alternate 125 milligrams of EQ or DECA, right? So it was just kind of easy to keep on track, right? Yeah. But like then we started dropping weight, but I was kind of like feeling better and stronger as we were dropping weight. So I attributed that to one. It was my first time ever using Primo Bowling.
Yep.
And it was at a pretty high dose. We were running 560 milligrams a week of Primo, which is pretty high, but I felt fucking good and felt really good in training. Even after I lost 20 pounds, like my strength was maybe better on some lifts, right? So that, and also, and the frequency of the injections, I thought maybe all these hormones are more stable in my system. That's why my training's better consistently. I don't know for sure, obviously. But yeah, I don't know. It just works better for me. And like I said, all my pins are going great. No sore injections. I don't ever worry about getting an infection because I think you got to be a fucking dummy like to do that. Like, like I shave my body all year round, so I don't have any body hair. I'm just clean anyway. Like I wipe down everything. I wipe my spot. Obviously, I use clean needles every time I pin. And I've never dealt with that. Since I've been doing this, I've been using for 8 years. I've never had any issues with infections or anything like that. So, and it kind of seems to be the more common theme lately with higher level guys is like the more frequent injections, right? I don't know.
That's the cool thing about bodybuilding is you can have different perspectives. You can have different philosophies and approaches, and in some way, shape, or form, still arrive at the destination. You and I have, even though you're like twice my height and twice my body weight, we have similar structures. We have similar strengths and similar weaknesses, and we have also a similar trajectory in our progress while doing things almost totally different.
Yeah. And like, I'm big on that too. And I remind myself that all the time. Like sometimes I stress about like you said, like majoring in like little things. Right. But at the end of the day, sometimes I'm just like, okay, you know what? Like the drugs are there. I'm eating how I'm supposed to be eating. And every time I go in the gym, I leave nothing in there.
Right.
I'm like, with 3 of those things, and my health supplements being on point too, like to keep me as healthy as possible. Cause like a healthy bodybuilder is the best looking bodybuilder, right? Health. I'm more big on health now in the last 2 years than I was before because I was young and stupid. But also, I've just learned that a healthier bodybuilder is a better bodybuilder. If you are physically healthy, your organs are healthy, you are going to look better. If you are unhealthy, your skin is going to look shitty. Your muscles aren't going to grow as well. You're not going to be able to achieve conditioning as well when you have like a high toxicity of shit in your body and you're not doing all the other things that you need to take care of it properly to keep it healthy. And I think if all those things are in place, like you said, like you're going to end up in the same spot,
Yeah. I will add one layer to that in that I'll say you can't make gains if you're dead, right?
Yeah. Yeah, dude.
Or if you're on dialysis or whatever, what have you, or if you make yourself a diabetic, you do any of those things, then bodybuilding's done for you. So you have to monitor your health. And on that note, I wanted to also add that right now, no one's going to be able to go get their regular blood work done during this pandemic, right? You don't want to go to the clinic. You don't want to go to the hospital to have blood drawn. You want to avoid those places right now. So when choosing your cycles or running your cycles right now, you have to keep in mind that it's a lot harder or more complicated or scarier to go get blood work done now than it was only a few months ago.
Yeah.
So
it's a bad time to be stupid, bad time to get yourself in trouble.
Yeah.
But yeah, and like that's one thing too, man. Like I'm not in a rush like I kind of was like before, like 3 or 4 years ago, I was like, okay, I want to be pro by the time I'm 25. And I'll do anything because it was kind of like the cool thing to do. Like the younger you turn pro, like you get all the fucking like glory and hype, right? But I've noticed that like a lot of these guys that turn pro young either don't really last or they die or like they run into health issues. Like I can name a few, man, right? And some of them just disappear off the face of the earth, right? And it's because they were 25 on the Arnold stage, but they didn't compete next year because they had a ton of health issues. And even this year I was like, okay, like I would like to turn pro by when I'm 27. And that's only because I put in all the work I needed to last year to have the amount of muscle I needed to achieve that and things like that. Right. But now obviously the way this year is going, like who knows if I'm even going to compete when I'm 27. So like those thoughts have really left me this year because I'm like, listen, like I'm 6'2". I didn't really start lifting weights till I'm 20. If I turn pro by the time I'm 28, 29, 30, like that's still pretty good. And I still got a good, if I want, like 10 years of competing at like the highest level that there is, and if I'm healthier when I start my pro career, like hopefully that happens. Like I'm not saying I'm definitely going to turn pro, but I'm going to fucking try. And if that, like, that's perfect. That's ideal. That's enough time for me to build a brand, and to make sure that what I do in bodybuilding will last me financially for the rest of my life,
Yeah.
So like, that's really my main focus now. It's like, okay, I want to do this right. I want to take the time. And by the time I turn pro, I'll be ready to compete as a pro. Right.
Well, that's the other thing about turning pro is we're all in a hurry to turn pro, but we all forget that once you turn pro, you're going to be the worst pro in that show if you jump right into a pro show for the most part. But then it's not always the case. You got guys like Coach Little Joe.
Oh yeah.
He got his pro card at the Toronto Pro, and like the next day the pro qualifier, and the next day or that night he did the pro judging, and he did awesome. He looked great.
He came fourth. I was there.
Yeah, Robin Strand did similarly, but these are guys that, although they're still relatively young, they've been bodybuilding and doing it the right way for a long time.
Yeah.
I personally know that if I do this long enough, I will turn pro, but after that, once I'm a pro, because the pro ranks are so hard and so deep, and there's so many genetically gifted guys out there that are getting twice as far, doing half the shit we are, half the work, half the gear. They have the better genetics. You're going to be competing against those guys. And for me, I'll be honest, if and when I get my pro card, if I get top 5 in a pro show in classic physique, and not just a show that no one goes to, a real show. If I get top 5 at a real show, that's it for me. Like,
yeah,
that's as good as it could get. And I'm honest with myself. So I'm not in a hurry. I want to keep doing the amateur shows, and because I can win those, right? But once you get to the pro ranks, for a while, you're just going to be a schmo. you know, top 15, top 10. And then, like I said, if I make top 5, then that's amazing for me. So.
Yeah, man. Yeah, like there's so many fucking levels to it, man. Like people don't even understand, right? Like turning pro is really just like kind of starting over, because then like, you know, you got to bring the politics and shit into it too. Like you got to pay your dues, right? And that's just the fucking way it is. If you don't like it, you're in the wrong sport. So, you know, you got to think long term. And I'm the same way, right? Like I just want to get there, pay my dues, you know, try to have a solid career as a pro. You know, if I win a pro show and go to Olympia, great. Probably not going to get any better than that for me, right? But we've seen guys like Dusty Hanshaw and, you know, like Fuad. But Fuad did win a couple pro shows. He was really good in his time. But like, look what they've made from their careers, right? Like, probably the most well-known guys, fantastic on social media, have this huge following. You know,
John Meadows.
To say they're influencers are an understatement, but people still respect them, right? So, yeah, man. But I think that's good. I think we'll leave it there for today.